Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Roll the Dice with Dave. Everybody that's out there in Facebook land, either checking it out live or we're going to be checking in later on at a recording. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Roll the Dice with Dave. We would love to have you be part of the change we are trying to see in this world. Also, if anybody's checking in on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel Roll the Dice with Dave to get all the latest updates on guests, topics, and upcoming events. So without any further hesitation, I want to go ahead and bring out tonight's guest, which I'm really excited to have. I always like checking in with the person that I refer to as the GOAT of Day 7 for our grouping. She is an unbelievable individual, an amazing person. So I'm going to go ahead and bring out the real Dr. Jehu.
Hello.
Christine, how are you doing this evening?
I'm amazing and tired. So just so you know, it's always going to be real with me, but I'm so excited to be here.
I know. So one of the things I forgot to mention in the introduction, but I'll go ahead and make the mention now. We're going to get a little bit of parental guidance, because whenever you and I get together and talk, we we just talk, right? Two people just sitting and talking. And with you being the real Dr. Jehu, you do nothing but just keep it real. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you today a little bit about some mental health and along with some other things. If you don't mind just giving a brief introduction of yourself, just so the audience can get a little reacquainted with you. It's been a while since you and I have actually sat down and chatted.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Christine Jehu. I use she, her pronouns, and I like to call myself a coffee-obsessed psychological ninja. So I think the first part is self-explanatory, but I am a psychologist, licensed psychologist, so sport and counseling psychologist. So my day job is as a sports psychologist, but I also have a black belt in karate. So I legitimately am a psychological ninja.
That's cool. You know, and I feel every time we talk, I love talking with you because I always feel I learned something a little bit different and new. How long have you had the black belt? Because I know you did it, but I don't know if I knew you had a black belt.
Yeah. So I tested for my black belt in the 5th grade.
Man, so you're like Ronda Rousey badass, right?
Like old school.
From like old school. So do you still see yourself? Do you actually see yourself? Do you still work out, stay in condition, stick with the craft?
I don't stick with the craft, but it is one of those things, like the level at which we trained and the number of hours that we put in, it comes back. You know, I could pull out kata moves and you get in a stance real fast and the moves just come.
It's like riding a bike or driving a stick, right? So the reason I say driving a stick is my son just got a 2004 Mustang 5.0 GT convertible, and it's manual.
What color?
So it's gray with a black rag top.
Oh, nice.
And it does look pretty sharp. I like it for such an older car. It's like 17 years old.
Yeah.
But it's a nice looking car. And I remember when, so we had his 74 El Camino. And unfortunately the head gasket blew on the motor. And we were sitting there going, do we put the time and energy in rebuilding this machine, or are we going to look at going a different route? He went a different route.
Okay.
And he calls me, he goes, "Hey Dad, I need you to check out the car." And I go, "Sure, man, I'll check out the car." He goes, "The only thing is, like, if we want to get it, I'm gonna need you to drive it home." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "It's a stick."
I love that.
So I was like, okay. So we go check it out. And I was like, "Hey man, this is mechanically sound. It's got a few little cosmetic things. It's 17.
Yeah.
But I drove it home and it comes back quick. Boy, I tell you, when you drive one, it took him just about a day or so of lessons.
Awesome.
And he's driving it around. And now my 16-year-old son also got behind the wheel. And so I feel good as a dad that I've taught my boys a skill.
Yes, there you go. And driving stick is so fun.
It is. Here's also another cool thing, right? So they may have friends who'll be like, "Hey, can I borrow your car?"
Nope, sure can't. You can't drive it.
Right. They can't. So that's
college. That's what saved me from people driving my car in college. I was like, sorry about your life.
Yeah. Now the only sucky thing is, so we put it on the insurance. It's a sports car.
Oh yeah.
That belongs to an 18-year-old.
Right.
So it's like, there goes the insurance on that. It's just crazy. But
we'll pray for you, my friend.
I know, right? But of all my kids, I'm glad it's my son Diego. He's pretty chill, but good. You're still behind the wheel of a sports car that's a 5-speed. It's a convertible, so he's been driving it around with the top down.
Nice.
It is legit. So he took his girlfriend's mom for a ride around the car. They put the top down. She was like, "This is so cool. I love it." Right. So he's definitely living his best life right about now. So I'm really happy for him that he got something. So I want to move to the next little section called the review. And this is where I just like to talk to guests. Is there anything that they've come across that maybe they just want to mention or talk about that they think, more people need to know about this, or maybe more people need to be doing something along these lines? Do you have anything for us?
Well, this is gonna be like a classic psychologist thing, but like, go to therapy. I think we're gonna dive into a lot of this tonight, but there is not a person in the world right now that hasn't been touched by the pandemic. And if you don't think your life has been touched by the pandemic, you're lying to yourself. Like, I'm just gonna be straight. Like, we've all been impacted, and like therapy is excellent.
So hit that therapy coming right. I love how you said it. This is such a psychologist thing to do. I want to ask you something else though, because
Yeah.
you said you're a coffee crazed or
Obsessed.
coffee fanatic,
Coffee
coffee obsessed. What is your favorite coffee?
Okay, so I'm just real, like, not fancy. So if I'm going to Starbucks, I'm getting a grande black iced coffee.
Grande black iced coffee. Now I got to ask you
Yep.
this: do you get all into the pumpkin spice latte thing, or is that just not? That's not you, or
Yes,
do you get
I
into it?
do. I
Oh,
do.
no way!
I do.
Oh,
So yeah,
shit.
I'll do
That's
like
so funny.
the pumpkin, what do they call it? Like a pumpkin cream cold
You're
brew or
talking to the wrong one
whatever.
because I've given up coffee. Like I don't do coffee. I know people look. I've given up
I
like
don't
Coca
understand
Cola.
your life.
Um, I've given up all that stuff.
Oh,
Now my problem is I gave up that stuff and started the ice cream craze. That's
oh,
been
okay,
my
okay.
issue, right? So,
I stay on both of those.
oh God, I've
Can't
I've
stop,
eaten
won't
more
stop.
ice cream, and I say it so much, and people are probably tired of hearing it, but I know I've eaten more ice cream in the last 18 months than probably my entire life combined.
Really?
Right? Oh yeah, and
Okay, what's your favorite flavor?
oh God, so there's so many, but one of the ones I tried, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this one up.
Okay.
It was one by Ben and Jerry's. It was
Uh-huh.
called Change the World,
Oh, I
and
haven't
it
had that.
was inspired by Colin Kaepernick.
Mm.
It was a vegan based
Is he
because
vegan?
he's clean. Yeah, man, he's all
Okay.
about it. So,
I didn't know
um,
that.
yeah, a buddy of mine works for Ben and Jerry's, and he gave me a limited print. It was like one of 200 of Colin Kaepernick say "I know my rights," and he's got his hand up. It was graffiti style, so the
Oh,
old
that
school
gave
New
me
Yorker me.
chills.
So I framed it and I put it over my desk. So let's say if I was sitting in my desk, you could see that little ledge behind me. If I was in my
Uh-huh.
office on campus, that's where it sits. So when people
Excellent.
walk in, they see me and they see that.
Oh, as it
Um,
should be.
so, that was probably so satisfying. Not that it was just for a good cause, but it was also so damn good. I mean, it was
Yes.
so good, such a good flavor.
Oh, do they
That
still
that
make it?
yeah. So it's still out
Okay.
there. The cool thing is they've talked about getting with inspirational women now, women that have driven change to start
Mm.
create flavors after some of these women. So I
Okay.
was like, does that mean we're going to see RBG flavor coming out? Like, what are we going to, what's going to
Yeah,
be
that's
next?
what's up.
And he's like, you'll see when we get to that point. But,
Oh my gosh.
I don't
How
think I've met
fun
an
would that
ice cream.
be?
Oh, to be on that team coming up with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right now, I don't think
Oh,
I've met an ice cream that I've disliked
okay.
during the
Okay.
pandemic. Now that makes my doctor nervous, right? Because the last time I went, he was like, you might want to be careful. You put on a few pounds,
Right,
and I
right.
was like, it's all good, man. So I'm back in the gym now, lifting with my son, which is
Okay.
awesome but painful.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's painful.
Uh-huh.
And when
Break
I
it
say
down to build it
painful,
up.
it's oh yeah. So today we did legs, and I was walking like a 95-year-old man.
I call that
You
the
know,
workout waddle.
yes. But the positive that has come from this is the other day we went out and we were throwing a baseball. And for the
Uh-huh.
first time, and I'd say probably about 15 years, I was able to throw a baseball with no pain.
Ooh,
No pain
okay.
in the arm or anything. And it's probably from
Yeah,
just the lifting and building up the body back
definitely.
up. So, because he
Yeah.
even said, he was like, man, you haven't thrown this hard in a long time. And yeah, it felt good. It felt good.
Good, good.
Here's another thing that I have for you just from a review, because I recently went
Yeah.
to a conference, and
Okay.
I'll talk about that in the next segment. Two things. One, they came up with wristbands to give to people to let other individuals know their level of comfortableness with human contact.
Oh, wow.
So they had a green,
Okay.
meaning they're shaking hands,
Yeah.
they're hugging.
All in.
They had a yellow, which
Okay.
means elbow and fist bumps.
Okay.
And they had a red. We're going to keep the 6 feet and I'll wave at you. Right. So that was
Fascinating.
what they implemented to try. And the way they put it was that a lot of people are having anxiety with how do I greet people now that we're seeing people face. Have you experienced, do you know of people having like this, I don't know what to do? And
Yeah,
Can I shake hands?
and
Right.
not on like an anxiety level, but that awkward like, what do we do? I don't know, like, do we shake? Do we like what do we do? So yeah, I mean that's a nice way of I don't want to say leveling the playing field, but just being open about where we're at so that we know sort of these new rules of engagement.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. So at the conference, I put on a wristband. But the cool thing is, as people were walking up, they kind of held their arm up so people can see what the wristband was and that
Oh.
eliminates that awkward moment. And then the other thing that I'm going to try and implement: no email Fridays, right, at
Ooh.
work. So I know it's hard, but here's
Okay.
the thing: it's not that no emails can happen at all,
Okay. Okay.
but the contact, like if you need something documented or email, that's not where you start. Is the email? You either have to pick
Mm,
up the phone and call and actually speak to somebody,
okay.
or if they're in your building, you walk up and down the stairs or you walk down to the office, and
Okay.
that's the initial engagement has to be something more personal,
Uh-huh.
because when they talked about at the conference, the idea was people are getting too used to, let me just
Mhm.
video or let me not show up.
Yeah.
And there's this one school in North Dakota that has implemented, and their productivity and their collegiality and everything they said has just gone through the roof. Their kind of the culture, the organizational culture has just gotten better since they implemented it this semester.
That's
Um,
excellent.
and I was like, well, I'm stealing those ideas. So those are the things that I
Yeah.
wanted
Oh my
to
gosh, I
have
love that.
in the review. And I want to ask you this too before we move on, because
Yeah.
Halloween is coming up. Are you a big like scary movie person for Halloween?
No,
No. Oh, okay.
I'm
So I want to ask
not.
you this. How about the candy? Though, do you get down with the candy?
In moderation.
So what is your favorite Halloween candy?
A Reese's cup.
Oh, okay. Do you like them just regular, like room temperature, or do you refrigerate them? Freezer, refrigerator first? Or have you
Oh,
never done that? Oh man, you're missing
no.
out. I
I
like
need
putting
to
them in the
try that.
freezer for a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Like a 30-minute situation or like a
If
overnight?
you forget it, it gets a little hard, but
Yeah.
30 minutes is usually good. It gives it
Okay.
just enough. That peanut butter gets a little bit of that kind of, where if you put it goes right, you get that.
Oh, so it's kinda like a peppermint patty
Yeah, it's
kinda
firmed up.
consistency
Yeah,
thing? Okay.
it's
Okay.
awesome. It's awesome. It's really good. So
I
you might
can
want to check that out.
yes. Yes.
So moving on to the next section, we got
Yeah.
HTM highlights. Have you done any traveling lately? Done anything outside that
Yeah.
realm?
I
Where have
went
you been? What have you
to
done?
I went to, Charlotte a couple weeks ago to
Okay.
see 2 other psychologists, actually. So, one of, my former trainees got married during the pandemic, and they had their reception, so flew down there for that and then stayed with another friend who was also a former counseling center training director, and, like, we went to a Panthers game and drank a lot of wine and just
Oh, cool.
hung
So
out.
you kind of back out there. Yeah, I just flew for the first
Yeah.
time. Right, I flew
Yeah.
for the first time. Um,
It
it
was
was if
weird getting back on a plane.
Yeah, it was weird to me too. What felt the weirdest to you getting back on a plane?
Well, the thing that felt the most strange was I flew the weekend that the world essentially shut down and, like, flew out of the Philadelphia airport, and so when I was flying out to go actually, that flight was to North Carolina, a different part of it, but then walked back like, the first airport being back into I walked by the gate that I was at, and it just was this eerie feeling of like, "Yo, I was here the weekend things shut down."
Wow, that's nuts. I think the thing for me was, except for the mask, everybody kind of acted like everything is just bad, right? Like everything,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nothing. Yeah, like there was nothing absolutely going on. That just
There
felt
was
a little
no
weird to me.
distancing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that
was
that felt weird
strange.
to me. They're like, hey, make sure you got a mask when you walk to the airport, get on the plane, keep them on. But it just had that feeling, almost like, man, we're just doing this just because
Yeah,
I guess we just have to do this right now. But
yeah.
some people just seemed like they just didn't care. That felt
Yeah, it was
that
strange.
awkward.
I was the
Um,
asshole who, like, got a really bad sinus infection while I was away, and so I was, like, like coughing, and I had to blow my nose like a champ on the flight back home. And I was like, "Oh, what do I do? I
Well,
don't
here's
have the
the
vid."
well, now everybody looks at you like you're carrying the zombie virus when you
Yeah. Yeah.
right. So another thing I noticed is people are freaking rude, right? I feel they're
Yeah, that
ruder
hasn't
now,
changed.
right? But I feel it's gotten worse. And I think of people I still consider part of my tribe, the people in the hospitality and tourism management industry.
Yeah.
There are people showing up, giving everything they got to try and keep things going.
Yeah.
These are the people we should be treating nicer and better,
Oh my
right? Because
gosh.
they're showing
Yes.
up, and I just heard some people the way they talked to some people. I'm like, what a dick! And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
like, kick him off the plane, right? Just
Right.
like, just get
And
him
like,
out of
what
here.
makes you think you're gonna get anywhere with that, like being a jerk to somebody? I just don't understand.
Yeah, neither do I. But it was also fun uh, traveling again to
Yeah.
land, walk out. I'm in someplace else.
Yeah.
And then I did a quick turnaround for the trip. So I flew out on a Thursday, went to conference events on Thursday, Friday morning did it, and then hopped on a plane back Friday because my son had a football game that night.
Look at
So
you
I
showing
landed,
up.
like drove right to the airport, and
Yes.
everybody goes, "Are you really cutting your trip short?" And I was like, "Yeah, my son's got a football game,
Priorities.
I'm just like, I missed it so much when it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Just going to sporting events, doing that
Oh my
stuff
gosh.
that I'll be
Yes.
damned if I can be there, I'm going to be there. So we went ahead and I did that and met the family there. It was so much fun. Got that win against a big crosstown rival. So
There you go.
that was a lot of fun. So I want to move into our next little segment, and this is where I really am looking forward to getting your thoughts on things. So the first thing that I just want to talk to you about, in your opinion, what do you think should happen with Christopher Columbus Day? Right. So we just had Columbus Day come up, and there's stuff all over both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on kind of how things are being done, or what you think should be done with regard to how here in the US we deal with Columbus Day?
Yeah. I haven't been on social media or like seen the things in the news. So I don't know like all of the buzz that's happening, but I think we have to honor the land, right? And honor the people who were here and who were, their worlds were destroyed by colonizers. So, do we there's probably arguments out there of like, you're trying to erase history. Like, like, do we erase it? No, but like, can we acknowledge it for what happened and be honest about history and stop just giving the white man's version of everything? Because I'm sick of that.
Well, and that's a thing. So the issue I'm having is there are some people that I've known for a while, and they're like, we gotta keep Christopher Columbus Day exactly the way it is. Actually, one that I've known, we worked together at a camp for kids way back when, and she goes, people need to really understand their history, and Christopher Columbus was not as bad as everybody's saying. So I replied, and I was like, so basically what you're telling me is that growing up Puerto Rican and all the history that the Puerto Rican people almost being extinct, where they're lying. Like this is lying. She goes, well, I guess I'm not saying that. Just do your research to make sure you're getting your facts straight. And I was like, so basically you're saying that, right?
Culture
and that's
and
the
my
tough
people.
Part, right?
Thanks.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Since we are talking about mental health and things like that, because I'd say before the pandemic, I probably just would have been like, whatever, and not think twice about it and just kind of move. But with all this, you get a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
You have a lot of time to think, and it's like, it's bothered me. Right. So it festers. And I think you and I have known each other long enough that I don't consider myself a mean person.
No.
But I'm kind of like, when I read it, I was like, well, fuck you very much. You know, how
Mhm.
dare you say
Mhm.
that? And it just it hurt, right?
Yeah.
You know, so what would you recommend maybe to somebody who is just so mentally distraught or goes to a place, how to maybe deal with that? So now I'm asking you for some tips that maybe
Uh-huh.
somebody can. And this is why I said before we came on, I said this is almost going to be like I'm going through a session with you,
Yeah.
in the goat. You know, what would you recommend to maybe get somebody from here, you know, kind of maybe to bring it down a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to like lessen the intensity. So and I don't want any of these responses to feel like kind of flippant or
Hmm.
minimizing what someone's experience is. So what I'm hearing in your question is like I'm the person who's having an interaction with somebody, say online on Facebook or something, and I'm stewing in my shit right now
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
I don't have a person in my house to go and chat with. Um I well, exercise is always really great, right? Because one of the things that's happening is there is a stressor, and so you're having a stress reaction. And so one of the things that can help like complete that stress cycle is exercise. So, go out, do a run, drop and do some push-ups, get that leg press going, whatever it is. But moving your body is really, really helpful. But also, I'm a huge, huge fan of putting pen to paper and doing some journaling. And that doesn't have to look like, Dear diary, today this person on Facebook said this thing that made me angry. No, it's like if you need to write fuck 100 times over and over on the paper and like just blast this person because that's a safe space and it's,
Hmm.
you know, probably more productive than what I call getting in a thumb war, right? Like nothing's going to come of getting in a thumb war, like typing on social media. Um, because other people have already made up their opinions. So like have that conversation on a piece of paper in your space that you don't have to give to the person on first draft. I mean, you could always give it or use it later. But putting pen to paper is a really fantastic way to start to sort through your thoughts and kind of arrive at, okay, like let me get this release and then hopefully it will give me some clarity of what I need next. And maybe what I need next is to call a friend or go out for a jog or get some ice cream.
Exactly. Yeah, I like the ice cream part, right? That's my favorite part. But no, thank you for that. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about, get a little bit more of your thoughts. And you and I mentioned this before we came on. Dave Chappelle recently came out with his final installment, uh, The Closer, on
Mhm.
Netflix. And you know, a lot of people are familiar with Dave Chappelle's battle, basically with the LGBTQIA plus community. And some people feel that, you know, he's gone through four and there's been no growth. There's still a lot of hatred.
Mm.
And I even mentioned to you, you know, at times I sit there and I laugh at some of the things he says. And I hope you don't mind, but I'll use our interaction. You know, he's mentioned issues that I know you're open, you're part of the LGBTQIA plus community,
Yeah.
and I don't consider you just a friend. I consider you family, right?
Yeah.
So there are times when I sit there and laugh, and then I go, "Oh man," but making money and telling jokes at the expense of people that I consider family. And then he
Yeah.
took it a step farther and goes, "They're not listening to what I'm saying. I didn't have an issue with just that. I've had an issue with white people." So now, right, like
Mm.
he doubles down on you, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're um, what are your thoughts? You know, and I don't know how much you've paid attention, but what are your thoughts about kind of that whole situation with him being a comedian, kind of the battle that's taking place? He's trying to push his social justice issues for the African
Mhm.
American community forward, but some people feel he's doing it at the expense of another community. Um,
Sure.
you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were having a conversation at work today about like what is social justice to us and how do we want to live that out? And I think what's so hard is there's so many ways to do social justice. And does it need to be at the expense of another oppressed group. I don't think that's probably like our best way to go about it. I think there's a lot of opportunities to join forces, and like not engage in, the oppression Olympics. I don't like saying that, but for, lack of a better term tonight. So yeah, and like I laugh at it too, right? Because sometimes you say things and it's just true, right? Like there are stereotypes about the community that are grounded in some truth. And so sometimes the shit's funny. But then it feels icky, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, you're making money off of me and in a way that doesn't feel good. So yeah, like I don't have the magic answer to it, but it's, we don't have to do social justice the same way across the board. There's no consensus there, but I think there's a way that we can do it with care and compassion for the humanity of other people. And a lot of people don't understand the trans experience. And as I was reading up on it, there seems to be a lot that like maybe he's not connecting with, but just because you don't connect with another human's lived experience doesn't give the right to dismiss it.
Yeah, no, and so I watched the special twice. Right, so I watched it twice, and the first time I watched it, I've always been a big Dave Chappelle fan. Always been a big Dave Chappelle fan, and I've watched all of his series on Netflix and his progression and things like that. And I could relate with a lot of the things he talks about being an Afro-Latino male. I understand where he's coming from. I also understand that a lot of times in the Latino community and in the African American community, the idea of the toxic masculinity that creates and the history that goes there.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really watched the second time and paid a lot more attention to is when he was telling the story about a trans woman that he befriended who was a comedian. And he went through and he goes, I was still working through some stuff. I'm still transphobic. He goes, but in the instance of all the stuff that was going on, he talks about how this individual stood up for him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And says, he doesn't punch up, he doesn't punch down, he punches lines. And he's a master at his craft. And then this individual took a lot of blowback. And he was talking about how he was bothered because he goes, here's somebody who stood up for me and shouldn't have been attacked by their own community, and they were. And then this person committed suicide. And he revealed a side of himself that surprised me. But a lot of his comedy deals with intersectionality, right? There's people that overlay. And I've had a chance to talk with some people, and one of the things that they brought up, they said, they have an issue because they're part of the LGBTQIA plus community, but they're also Black.
Yeah.
They're excited to see a Black man succeeding, but at the same time succeeding at their expense. What are your thoughts on maybe what somebody can do when they encounter some of that mental anguish revolving intersectionality and where they feel they fall, right? And the reason I bring that up is because Dave Chappelle mentioned, he didn't feel that this woman was part of the LGBTQIA plus tribe. He goes, I felt she was part of my tribe, the comedian tribe, because she was also a comedian, an amateur comedian that he was trying to help like elevate. And he goes, she was part of my tribe. We were comedians because she told jokes and she'd be laughing at these jokes that I'm telling because she used to come to my shows and laugh at these jokes.
Right.
So there's a lot there. What are some of your thoughts on that conversation? Because that's a tough thing where you are being pulled between two pieces, how you go about it. And I'll use myself as an example, being Catholic, right? There's the idea that was always pushed that homosexuality is a sin.
Yeah.
Right? You're not supposed to do that. But being a Catholic, that's what I'm supposed to believe in. But there's that conflict of, okay, I'm Catholic, but I've surrounded myself with people that are good people, and it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
So
Yeah, like I think it's tricky, and like the piece with Dave, you know, we cannot determine for another person what parts of their identity are most salient to them, are most important, like that lead the charge, so to speak. Because in all parts of our identity, we're on a different developmental trajectory, right? So like using sexual orientation as an example, I've done a lot of research in this area. As like my dissertation was on gays and sports, and I just throw that around, gays and sports. That's my life.
Oh, you know what? I need to zoom you into my class because I'm teaching a class on diversity, and I have
Ooh,
several sport management students. It's diversity issues in the service industries, but it's all
okay,
hospitality and sport management students. And I know that's a
yeah,
random
I
like
love it.
reach out, but I'm going to be reaching out and zooming you into class so you can just kind of
Yeah,
chit chat with.
yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, like this piece around sexual orientation, I read some literature way back when that described like we have our biological age. So let's say, you know, you've got a college person who is you know, they're 20 years old right now. They came out when they were 18. And so biologically, they're 20 years old. But in terms of their sexual orientation, they're essentially a 2-year-old. And so you can think about developmentally, what do 2-year-olds do? Like, how do they get to know the world? They're crying, they're flailing, they're putting things in their mouth, they're learning language, they're figuring out like how to use their limbs and all of those things. I think that's what 2-year-olds do. I haven't birthed humans, so I don't know really where they're at.
Yeah, no, you're pretty spot on.
Okay, okay, good.
I've done it 4. I've been involved 4 times. That's pretty spot on.
There you go. So you think about somebody who's like early in their identity as, you know, a queer person, and their how they show up in the world um may not align with their biological age. So like that's one thing to think about, as where are we in our understanding, like our racial identity development, our like gender understanding, our gender identity. And like you said, they all overlap. And so there are going to be parts that are going to be more evolved, that are going to be more center, that are going to be more driving of our experiences. A lot of my experience in the world is driven through my gender for various reasons. And so I don't always lead with my identity as a lesbian, but I am always like front and center with my identity as a woman and being aware of how that is impacting the spaces that I'm in. Now, somebody who is not me, who's experiencing me, may primarily experience me as a white human being, right? And that's their experience of me, which is different. I mean, I'm very aware of my whiteness and the privilege that comes with my whiteness. But that's not necessarily the identity that I lead with. Now, I don't ignore it, right? So is this making sense? I feel like I'm going, I have
No, it does.
a lot
No,
of
it
thoughts.
but this is a lot of stuff, right? This is a lot of stuff, and trying to break it down, it's tough. But you said something, and it hit me like a kick drum. You said they may be 20 years old biologically, but if they didn't come out till they were 18, they're essentially a 2-year-old.
Mhm,
That has to be the best explanation I've ever heard
mhm.
in my life.
Because how many
Because
people do you hear? They're like, they're going out to the bar and they're doing all this stupid stuff and sleeping with these people or flailing about. Like, yeah, they're 2 years old essentially.
yeah, that and it makes so much sense. In dealing with individuals at different stages, I now look back and go, oh, you know what? That makes so much sense now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's even students that I'm dealing with at Flagler that their behavior now
Mm-hmm.
makes so much more sense because some have even admitted, well, I didn't come out until I came to college.
Yep.
And I was like, well, what year are you? And they're like, I'm a sophomore. So
Yeah.
essentially, they're like 1.5, right?
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense. It's so clear
Yeah.
in that explanation. That's
So
why I call you the GOAT. That's, no, that
well, and when you're dealing with somebody when you're interacting with somebody who you know, is navigating their multiple identities, or we have knowledge that there are multiple identities, right? Like well, we all have them. You could ask that person like, hey, so, I know it's important to you, your role in your family as a son, as a sibling, you're really involved in your major, you've just come out, like your XYZ race or whatever, what of those is most important for you? Like, what do you feel is leading for you on most days? And they may not have ever thought about it, but if they have, and they're from the jump, they're like, hey, my racial identity and my queerness, then you're like, okay, then you have some understanding of what the lens that they're viewing the world through, and like which lens is layered further out, that's guiding them and their experiences, which could help you understand more of the angle that they're coming at conversations from that may be different from yours.
Yeah, it's you bring up a good point, and it's also how people see you. So I am the faculty advisor for the Black Student Union at Flagler College.
Yeah.
They just started a Latinx student organization,
Mm.
and they were doing all kinds of stuff. And I ran into one of the students. I was like, "So what do you guys have going on? How come I haven't gotten the emails to see what your group's going on?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot you were Latino," right? Which I think is funny because my last name is Rivera, right?
Yeah.
But she's so used to seeing me lead the Black Student
Connected,
Union, she
yeah.
figured I identified just with my African American side versus
Yeah.
my Latino side, and I identify with both. A lot of times,
Mhm.
primarily actually with my Latino side because of my last name.
Sure.
Also, the physical, like when people
Mhm.
see me, yes, they see brown, but a lot of times it defaults to okay, he looks Latino of some kind,
Right. Right.
there. But when I look at the history of my family, there's Black from Africa,
Mm.
both my parents' side, going to Puerto Rico, and that's the Afro Latino. I have cousins
Yeah.
that when you look at them, they traditionally look like what people think when they think Black. Like, oh, that's a Black person.
Yeah.
But we're blood relatives, and but it's funny that you say that because she, in her mind, automatically processed.
Right.
He's a faculty advisor for the BSU. He must identify more with African American than he does with his Latino side. But it's interesting how you
and
laid that out.
our brain is designed to put things in categories to help us make sense of the world. And so if there was an initial filing of you with the BSA that was never then challenged, then yeah, it would just stay in that filing cabinet.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I want to move to the next segment called Beyond the Couch,
Yeah.
which I also want to add is the name of your brilliant podcast. If anybody is out there and you just want to check out a awesome, amazing podcast, I highly recommend Beyond the Couch. There are some times where I'm just sitting in my office. I know I'm not going to have a lot of traffic. Turn it on. If I know I might have people out and about, I'll throw on the headphones, especially when the long guys are out back. It's a great podcast.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I like, even though all of your guests come from the mental health space, such a wide variety of conversations take place. And, I hope this comes across in a good way, right? Now, I kind of forget that all of you are involved in mental health. You come across, just like you said, no psychobabble.
Yeah.
You come across as just people having conversations, trying to help people exercise this so they could be healthier and better, so they can get through the craziness of this world.
Yeah.
So as we talk about kind of going beyond the couch and all that stuff, what have you noticed just in your position? Because I know you do sports psychology, and you're still at Delaware, right? What have you noticed, and this may just be anecdotal, just about the mental health of those that you kind of see every day in your space, where you're at, where you work, where you play, where you just kind of hang out? What have you noticed from that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think like clinically, my clinical work is all with student athletes right now. And so always take the opportunity to remind people that athletes are people first and that they're not immune to mental health concerns. There's, a lot of built-in protective factors with sport and this level of sport, but I'm seeing a lot of anxiety. I'm seeing a lot of anxiety in colleagues, in coaches, and in the athletes. And oftentimes here recently, like on the back end of the pandemic, is more of that, what we might call like a rapid onset, but at a high level. It's like they went from 0 to 60 in, an afternoon. Now, when we peel back the layers, there's some some buildup and we can
Some build up to
identify.
it.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where most often, let me not say most often, but a large percentage of time when people come in for therapy, they have a clear identifying presenting concern. I have had depressed mood for a couple of months, or I had a loss, or I'm in this big transition in my life and I need support. Things aren't feeling aligned right now. But what I'm seeing now is there's like a drop in the bucket over here and then over here. There's like all of these little places that have been impacted that, one in and of itself, is manageable. Maybe even 3 of them are manageable, but they're coming at us from all directions, all angles, and not a single area of our life has gone untouched by the last 18 months. And so a lot of the confusion with folks coming in is like, this just feels really out of control and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to tackle it. I don't know what tools that I have in my toolbox that might help here. And so I say that to say, if you're a person who is having that experience and you're like, what the heck is happening? There's not one, or, there's not a thing that I can point to, that's okay. Because as the pieces, if you think about a bucket and everything like is a drop in the bucket, your bucket is likely overflowing, but you didn't realize that you were, that the water was starting to accumulate. So what can you do to like tip the bucket a little bit, pour out some of the water, take care of yourself, get a little bit of recharge, get an emotional release, talk to a therapist, even if you go for like 4 sessions or something, to have somebody to hear your story who doesn't know you from anybody and is able to reflect back to you, hey, this is what I'm hearing, normalize some of these things for you. It's so powerful.
Well, you mentioned something, somebody that doesn't know you. I guess my question to you is, how much do you think, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, trust, maybe shame, right? Because some people put the shame, like, oh, I need a mental health therapist.
Yeah.
How much do you think that plays into people just shying away from just talking to a mental health therapist?
Yeah. I think some of it is shame, and certainly what messages people have received throughout their life about therapy. But I think a lot of the negative messages come from the fear of the unknown, right? Our field has not done a great job of pulling back the curtain. Like, that's why I started the podcast, is because I want, one, people to like just hear me and realize like, I'm not your typical therapist. I don't, have I dropped an F-bomb? Probably like one, but I'm not like your stuffy lay on the couch kind of person, and that what we do is not a one size fits all. And so I'm trying to pull back the curtain, go beyond the couch, and share what it is we actually do and what people can expect. Because so I can't tell you like how many people have said to me, like, I don't know what to say. Okay, well, what's hurting, right? Like, that you have been sad and crying unprovoked for 3 months straight. Like, that's what you go in and tell the person. It's our job to then guide the conversation, to dig in, to ask you the further questions, to paint the picture and use our expertise around piecing it all together and offering, some solutions in terms of whether it's shifting our mindset or looking at it a little bit differently, normalizing a situation, providing tools, making referrals for medication, that's our job, So I just tell people, like, if you can figure out what feels icky, like it feels icky when I walk into work and I want to immediately run away and scream. Cool. Tell that to your therapist and let us take it from there.
Oh wow, man, you gave a lot of jewels of information there from that standpoint. I do have a question just to
Yeah.
get how are things operating at your institution? Like, are you guys back to normal? Are you guys back to quasi normal? When I say back to normal, face to face classes, people on campus, is that the situation? And then I'll ask a follow up question from there.
Yeah. So the campus is mostly back to in person. So in person, in masks, there are still some virtual courses. And, in terms of our sports, we're back training. There's still masks indoors and in the weight rooms, but if they're outside and they're training, then they don't have to be masked.
Oh wow. Okay. So with that, do you think that's contributing to that level of anxiety? Is it faculty and students, or do you notice more with students? And the reason why I asked, I just noticed here, we've made a lot of adjustments with what we do. We're also a tiny institution. We only have about 2,500 students, small campus.
Yeah.
So we started out with, hey, everybody has to wear masks all the time. Then we kind of, we're going to extend this a little bit longer. And now we've scaled back to, it's up to the individual faculty member inside certain classroom spaces if they want to set the mask mandate or not.
Gotcha.
So those that are in bigger spaces are like, you know what, I feel like we can social distance, we'll be okay. You can take off the mask. Some of the smaller classrooms are like, don't want to chance it. Sure. Everybody put your mask on.
Sure.
And that has caused more anxiety than I thought it would.
Decision fatigue.
Yes, it's but
and
not
changing
so much
expectations.
Well, yes, and here's the thing that I've heard. Now that I'm a department chair, I've had several faculty that have come to me and they go, "What is everybody else doing?" And I go, "Well, this is what I've heard." I said, "But I haven't asked because I'm supporting whatever a faculty has decided. If they said this is what they're going to do, I'm going to support that." But they're worried about being the only one in the department requiring masks in their classroom all the time. And I'll be honest, that's something that, who would have thought this is something that would have caused stress on somebody?
Yeah.
And some of these people, they're talking about how stressed they are at work. And I'm like, well, why are you so stressed? Like what? And when they finally tell me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, something as simple as I want people to be this way in my class is causing them, I feel, not to do their job or live their life to the maximum. It's a crazy feeling that I never thought I would have. Like, I just want to hug them and say, it's going to be okay. Right. This is not a big deal.
But you're like, what color wristband do you have on?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. What wristband?
I think with working with student athletes, I don't hear as much of that anxiety because they've been on campus training since the fall. Now, like last fall, and it looked a lot different then. And so, but they've been kind of in the mix a bit longer, and we're sweating on one another like in the thick of the pandemic, right? And so for them, I don't hear as much. And like I'm back to doing the majority of our clinical work, in the athletic department is in person. We're in masks when we're in our one-on-one appointments, but we're really only doing Zoom if we have a student athlete whose schedule is bananas and we need to fit them in, between classes and they can't get down to our location. But that's different than up campus in the counseling center where they're doing a lot of virtual work, depending on the safety of the clinician or the students. But they are, I think, experiencing more requests for virtual because of like the students' concern of the virus.
So I got and this is one of those crazy questions. When do you think things will get back to normal? Right. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna plop this next one after it.
Yeah.
Should we be trying to get back what we considered normal before? And I think you know what I'm getting at, right? Like
Yeah.
there are so many things I've changed
Yeah.
in just the way I interact. So
Yeah.
as a faculty member, you do want to hold people accountable for certain things, but um, I didn't give any. I made sure there were going to be no assignments that were going to be due over the fall break, unless
You are a kind human.
I just said, if I'm taking a break, shit, everybody needs a break, right?
Yeah.
Students coming to me, literally just saying, "Hey, I just need a day." I've literally had students come to me before class and they're like, "Hey, Dr. Rivera, I know I'm here, but I just really need to not be in class today." And I'm like, "Is everything okay?" And they're like, I just need to be at home and not doing anything." And I'm like, "Okay, I know we have an assignment today. We'll figure it out." Right. And that's complete different viewpoint than I have, which it's not normal, right? Normal. But I don't know if I want to go back to what I considered normal before,
Right.
Because I feel I've developed a new sense of trust from the students that, hey, I can go to him about not wanting to be in class today just because I just need to breathe, and he's not going to lose his shit, and I'm not going to get a 0, and I'm not going to have a chance at failing, and right, because they have enough.
Yeah.
To me, that being the new normal is the normal I want to go. So that's why I asked, when do you see things going back to normal? Because I don't know if I want to go back to that. I'd love to not have to worry about masks, but I don't know if I want to go back to that. Do you see us going back to that normal?
I don't think so, because so much of what has shifted has like seeped into the fabric of how we're operating, right? The number of places that are realizing, hey, you can work from home and we're going to shut down offices to save real estate, that sort of thing. What I would challenge folks to think about is, if there's this longing for, the 2019 lifestyle, right?
It sounds so long ago, right?
I know. Like, think about, like, what is it that you're longing for? And, put the politics, put the virus aside, like, how you're living your life. What are you longing for? And is that healthy? Because I think a lot of the ways we were operating pre-pandemic in terms of our wellness, now there are things that we could have been doing during the pandemic as a whole, as a nation, as a world, to like improve our health rather than like avoid like catching something, but that's a whole other podcast. You know, was the old way healthy? And if there are parts of it that were, and parts of it that feel important for you to carry on or maybe adapt to post-pandemic life, then do it. But I think there's a lot of what we were doing and a lot of the ways that our world was operating that just don't serve us anymore. Like, I saw something recently about the like 40-hour a week, 8 to 5 situation was created when there wasn't a need for a double income house, right? And like you could live on $50,000 a year for a family of 4. Like, that's just impossible at this point, And so like we need to be thinking about, because we collectively we are running ourselves into the ground, and we can't go and do the 40 plus hours a week.
I was about to say,
And
it's more
then
like 50, 60 hours now.
yeah, and then all of, taking care of our homes, taking care of our animals, our families. It's things need to change
No, they
for
do. They do.
for our health.
So you mentioned, or we both talked about all these crazy things, and you and I talked a little bit before we came on. I was reading several articles about all the things that are popping up, but the one you mentioned, anxiety, a big one, but depression. it's scary to think the number of people that are suffering from depression, how this situation is just kind of putting things into warp speed
Yeah.
as far as the issue. Children, right, going to school. Uh, I recently saw it on Facebook, but before that, somebody had mentioned to me at a store, they said, "Hey, do you realize that it's been almost 3 grades since the last full normal year?" And I thought, oh, wow, that somebody who is a freshman in college, their last normal, completely school year, they were a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just kind of went, oh, right, because my son is a freshman in college, and his last full normal year, right,
Yep.
he was a sophomore. And then I think of my daughter, who's going to be getting ready to graduate soon, that almost her entire college career has been impacted by this situation. And even though they're like, oh no, everything's good, everything's gravy, I often think, is there something that is impacted or has altered as a result of that?
Sure.
Another thing that I've read about was the big jump in substance abuse. Job loss, creating all kinds of other issues. Overall, not just the mental issue, but physical health issues, people of color and the mental health aspect, bipolar. I mean, I just found a number of things. And as we kind of bring things to a close, we both mention or understand the importance of having that somebody. Please talk a little bit about what people can do or steps they can take to find that somebody.
Yeah. Well, I made something that helps. So yeah, I actually have a free quick start guide for finding a therapist, and it takes us through a number of different things that I think are really important. Like there's the logistical pieces around, are you using your insurance? Are you going to pay out of pocket? How much can you afford to pay? Where, do you want online or do you want in person? Like, what's your transportation like? Those logistical pieces, which then helps you narrow down your search. And I show you like a lot of different search engines to use, kind of how to navigate through them. And then some journaling prompts of what are you looking for? And like, what is the thing that feels off? Just a couple of things to get you ready to feel more confident in stepping into that first appointment with a clinician. And I think one of the really key things for people to know is that therapy is really about fit. Now you want to make sure, if you have an active eating disorder or that you have bipolar or something like that, there are certain conditions or situations where you need to have a specialist, right? Like if you are an athlete and you want to work with a sports psychologist, you need to find somebody like me, not just like somebody that looks great and happened to play sports ball in their past. Like they need to have the training, right? There's specific training that we have. So knowing that, you want to work with, like, search within those communities of providers and find a good fit. And it's often like kind of like online dating, you go to a website or you go to a profile and you'll check out a picture, you'll read a little bio. And if you just feel really drawn to somebody, reach out to them, send them an email, call, like whatever it is. But if somebody like has all the credentials, but there's this little like flutter in your stomach and you're just like, I don't think so, then don't spend your time. Because if you're trying to convince yourself to make the call, like we all know how those dating situations turn out. Not good, right? So like it's and I think something really important to know is that finding a therapist isn't like going to urgent care. You might need to wait a while to get in with somebody. I once waited 3 months to get in with a clinician because I had contacted 5 or 6 different people and nobody was taking new patients, or they were getting ready to close their practice. And this person was like,
Oh,
hey,
wow.
I'm just starting up my practice. I will have an opening in 3 months. And I said, put me in, because I know the world, and I was not in a place where I was unsafe and those types of things. Like I have the tools to navigate it. So knowing that, if you are thinking, hey, I might be ready to start therapy in a month, start making the calls now, because you
Wow.
will need to wait. And part of that is the pandemic, right? We are overrun right now. Like clinicians are at their max, and we're going through this too. And through the pandemic was one of the first times where I would sit in a Zoom room with somebody and I'm like, I have no idea what to say to you other than validate what you're experiencing, ask you questions to process through when I'm experiencing the exact same thing in real time. So we are having to take care of ourselves as well, which might mean for people in private practice that maybe they're taking on a couple fewer people because they need to heal and take care of themselves to be well for their clients. So yeah, that's kind of like a grim piece of it, but it's the honest truth. You won't get in with somebody straight away. If you are feeling suicidal, things like that, the National Suicide Hotline, there are resources out there. I have them all like listed in my podcast episodes. There's always links and things there for people to gain access. Also, did you know that they're in next year, 988 is going to be similar to 911, but 988 is going to be the number that you can call to get directly to the National Suicide Hotline?
I did not know that. That's awesome. That's good.
Yeah.
No, that's good to know. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear headphones and have a podcast. And I'm known as Christine Jehu, right? So, no, that's, it's so fascinating to hear you say that, because in listening to you talk, right, you are a mental health professional, but you're going through this shit too, right? So to hear you say that, you're helping drag people from one situation, you're trying to help guide them and navigate, and you're also trying to guide and navigate yourself through certain situations. And in this moment, I don't consider myself a dumb person, right? But I was just thinking, this is the mental health professional. This is the person that's going to help save people. But sometimes, right, you're a human. You are human, so you're going through your own stuff too.
Yep.
It just hit me in that moment, just how serious this situation is. But how a lot of people are still just not paying attention to it. And I think we need to normalize the conversation. I think we need to normalize that it's okay to say, hey, I need help. And that mental exercise is just as important as the physical exercise to get your body right. I just don't think enough people talk about it. And I was fortunate enough, I got an amazing wife. I got great kids. I have outlets, right? But even with all that, I still sought out this as one of my outlets, and not everybody has those opportunities. So thank you so much for sharing all that. And before I give you your final little bit to kind of wrap things up, I just have to mention this because I still can't believe you only have 900 followers on Instagram. Right? That just blows me away.
I don't even know if it's 900. I think it's like 840 something. I don't know.
When I went through and I was just like, how does she not have like 10K? How is she not verified?
Come on, let's get that blue check.
We gotta, we gotta do it. And I'm not saying that just because, I had a chance. I mean, from the moment I met you, when we all crawled into that van, right? the creepy white van go to the retreat.
Got our good snacks.
Talked about good snacks. We went to dinner. But from the moment I met you, one, I was like, how have I not met her before on the ECU campus?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because they kept me locked away in the counseling center.
I was like, how did I not meet her before on the campus? And then after that experience, spending 6 days kind of learning about each other, I was like, man, this is one of the most amazing people I have ever met. And I do not consider you, like I said, just part of my friend group. I consider you part of my tribe and my family. I would do anything for you. I absolutely love you to death. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course.
I already feel like uplifted, right? So I'm ready to take on tomorrow. Yeah, just by
Good.
sitting and talking with you. So as we wrap up, I want to turn it over to you. Here's your chance to kind of give your last tidbits of maybe information or something you want to share on the Rant and Rave with Dave. Christine, it's all yours.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, thank you for that. And right back at you, buddy. I mean, like emotions. They're good, all the things. Well, let's work on getting my Instagram verified. So go follow me.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. That's a must.
Yeah, but I would like I point out the Instagram. It's at the real Dr. Jehu, and because all the resources are there. Like there's a link tree in my bio that has the how to find a therapist quick guide. And once you get on that, it like drops in your email, and then you'll get like weekly emails from me that I try not to fill your inbox with a bunch of bullshit. I really like share what the next podcast episode is and a couple of things that, you know, I'm learning in life. Or like this week I shared about a book that I was reading and a movie that I watched, like short and sweet, no BS kind of stuff. Just trying to add value and bring some smiles to people's faces. But it has all the links to where you can find the podcast. I'm not like super cool like this yet. I'm not on the YouTube. But again, listen, I need an assistant. And if there's anybody out there who wants to do an internship, I need somebody to go through and listen to podcast episodes that I've been on and pull out quotes that resonate with you. That if anybody wants to do that, hit me up.
We'll definitely get that word out. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
and for just to let everybody know, next week I'm really excited. I am actually going to be speaking with political scientist Rachel Cremona. We work together at Flagler College, and in just several conversations passing and just sitting and talking with her, I turned to her and I said, would you ever be interested in just sitting on a podcast? And she goes, oh, I guess that could be fun. And I was like, I'll see you next week.
Excellent.
Right. So we set that up. So I'm excited just to get her take really on the political landscape of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Because also she is not native born to the United States. Right. So she came here. So it's really going to be interesting to just get her take as a political scientist on kind of everything. So I'm really looking forward to it. She's very well respected. She's absolutely loved and adored by the students at Flagler College. So this is going to be a fun conversation. And she's also one of the most fashionable people I've ever met.
Really?
You want to talk about, she's always dressed like to the nines.
Even during the pandemic?
Yeah, always. I don't think I've ever seen her impressive. Just not looking like sharp.
Okay, so you need to ask the question of like on Zoom, are you doing like the outfit mullet where it's business on the top and like chill on the bottom?
I'll ask her. And for some reason, I feel it's not because for some reason, I feel it's absolutely not. You know, what's going to be crazy is if she tells me yes. Right? She's like, oh yeah, you know, I've got like shorts on and she's got the business attire. Yeah, that's going to be nuts. But, Christine, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate everything you had. Like I said, this was. I feel like the energy, the batteries recharged. I'm ready to take on life and take on the week. So thank you so much for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Roll the Dice with Dave. Please don't forget to tune in next week. And also, let's get out there on Instagram and follow at The Real Dr. Jehu. Let's get them followers up because you should be a verified account. No doubt. But I hope everybody has a good night and we'll see you next week.